Hello, and thank you for listening to THRIVECAST. My name is Dr. Tara Rowe from the University of North Florida and the director of the THRIVE program. THRIVE is a supplemental support program for UNF students with a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. I'm excited to kick off our very own podcast channel known as THRIVECAST. Each episode will feature current, past, and even future THRIVE staff and students as we navigate topics related to our program. We are excited to share our unique stories from our own perspectives as we know firsthand how powerful our stories truly can be.
Hi everyone! This month's episode is focusing on goal setting and New Year's resolutions. Although more than half of the population creates a New Year's resolution every single year, about 80% of those resolutions are abandoned by February. These goals could be physical, financial, academic, or social, and the reason most of them fail is because of how they're prepared for. If a goal isn't set up to be successful, it won't be. This month, we decided to interview Ara, who's a current graduate student and mentor with the THRIVE program. We also decided to discuss this topic further with Dr. Tara Rowe later on in the podcast. So Ara, would you like to give the listeners a short introduction of who you are?
Well, I'm a student in the Master's of Science and Psychological Science program at UNF, and I'm currently a mentor in the THRIVE program, and I work with the students in THRIVE to help them with their academics and just be someone to help support them while they're in college. And hopefully my long-term career goals at this point are to work with students in a university setting and work in advising or career exploration.
Very cool. So this is a good conversation to be having with you. So our first question was, what have been your biggest struggles as a student? Because you've been both a student and a mentor. So in your student experience, what have been your biggest struggles as a student and setting goals?
Well, really, one of my biggest struggles with setting goals is my own issues with self-advocacy, which a lot of other students struggle with in the program. It really makes it difficult for me to follow through with goals too, because I'm uncomfortable often speaking out for myself and speaking to professors, and I feel like it's making it difficult for me to accomplish the things academically that I really want to, such as getting my degree. And it's something that I continue to work on, and I hope to be able to help some of the students with too.
So how do you hold yourself accountable to reaching your goals?
Well, still something that I'm working on, as I said, but usually I just reach out to other people that I feel comfortable with and talk about how I'm still struggling with the issue and how to overcome the issue. So usually I just talk with my parents or my friends or like a counselor. I've actually used the counseling center on campus, and that has really helped me a lot too.
Do you have any advice for students in THRIVE on how to set goals or to hold themselves accountable to reaching their goals?
I guess I would say just be able to talk about the issues that you're having and don't be afraid to ask people for help if you feel like there's something that's getting in your way, like there's something that you really want to do, but you're just not quite sure yet how to get there. You need a little bit of help, and there's always someone out there that you can reach out to help you out.
Thank you, Ara.
No problem.
Thank you again, Ara, for being part of this episode. Our next interviewee is Dr. Tara Rowe. So Tara, do you just want to give us a short introduction of who you are for people who haven't listened to past episodes of our podcast?
Yes, I would be happy to. My name is Dr. Tara Rowe, and I am the Associate Director for the Student Accessibility Services Center on our UNF campus. I'm also the Director of our THRIVE program on campus for our students on the spectrum.
We have a few questions for you today. So the first one is, what do you think are the biggest hurdles that students are facing setting goals right now?
So this is a huge area of not just research interest for me, but just personally, because I think one of the things that I've seen in all the years of working with students at different levels of functioning levels and just capabilities, there's this big disconnect between what is a goal and what is, I don't like the word dream, but what is a desire or a wishful thinking kind of mindset. And that disconnect between, oh, I really wish I could do this, and then a goal being, here's my plan, here's how I'm going to do this. And that action planning, that structured piece seems to be one of the biggest hurdles that not just students on the spectrum face, but students in general. And I would say even going beyond that, just young professionals and where we are right now with our current situation with COVID and having to shift our mindsets and everything else we're trying to deal with. But for our students specifically that are facing these hurdles, that action piece seems to be the biggest disconnect between getting something done and reaching a goal and having it be like a wishful thinking and, yeah, I wanted to do something, but I couldn't get it done. So another piece that I really feel like is a big hurdle for our students when they're setting those goals and with following through with those action plans is really taking ownership of these goals. A lot of students that I work with will identify maybe an academic goal to work on for the semester, and the student has come up with the goal, and me being a staff, I'm really excited. Oh, that's great. I love this goal. It's going to really help you. But the student hasn't really invested. It's not a personal, they're not excited, they're not motivated about that goal. It's just a goal that needs to be met. And without that buy-in, without that ownership, meeting goals and not meeting goals becomes a moot point, because no matter what, like, there's not excitement when you meet that goal, but also when you don't meet that goal, it's like oh, well, whatever, it's not my fault, or there's none of that ownership that happens. And that's really, really, I think, the most important piece when we're talking about goal setting is that ownership.
That makes sense. And I feel like that kind of ties into your first point.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for students in Thrive who are hoping to implement a New Year's routine or a new habit or goal for 2021?
So I'm biased in this because I spent a lot of years developing and honing in on practices that I'm seeing work more effectively than others. But the biggest piece of advice that I have for students who are trying to implement or they're a new routine or a goal or just something that starts their year off right is, without that action plan, that step-by-step process of what it is you're doing and how you're going to do it, it's exactly that. It's going to be a New Year's resolution that after a month, it fizzles and dies out. And the next 11 months are spent going, I wish I lost weight, or I wish I would have done this, but I ran out of time. And there's always going to be a reason. There's always going to be somebody else that prevented it from happening. But if you want to be successful in reaching goals and meeting those resolutions, you have to have that action plan to support it.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like the action plan, it kind of ties into like having smaller goals. Like the smaller the goal, the more achievable.
Well, not only that, but I think it helps with, and we talk about this in our executive functioning class, but without those small goals, it's really difficult to stay motivated for a long period of time if you don't have those small milestones that tell you, hey, it doesn't feel like it, but you're actually doing awesome and you're making progress. So the easiest example that I can think of when it comes to setting goals is weight loss, because it's very easy to measure. You either increased weight or decreased weight. There's not really a gray area in that. And if my big goal is to lose 50 pounds and I want to do it in a year is a really long time to stay motivated to losing 50 pounds, especially if you've never spent a year developing or working on a specific goal. So a year is that big goal, not that it's a bad goal, but you need to break it down into smaller chunks so that it's more manageable. And every month you check in to that bigger goal and compare that month. And then even then that month you can break it down by week. And so having those smaller goals that you can reach tell you what you're doing is working, or maybe what you're doing isn't working and you might need to readjust or shift that approach.
That's a really good point. Our last question
Mm-hmm.
is just, how do you yourself hold yourself accountable for reaching your goals?
This one's it's a tough one, because I think, if I'm being honest, it depends on the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I'm being even more honest, I would say it doesn't matter what the goal is, because the answer for me, Tara, would still be the same, in that the best way for me to hold myself accountable is to have accountability partners. And that's something that I think a lot of us struggle with, because we have this mindset, and I see it all the time with students, that if it's Johnny's goal to get an A this semester, and it's true, it is going to be up to Johnny whether or not he gets that A. But it's impossible and it's unrealistic to think that Johnny is going to get this A without any support or any help or any resources. And for me, I have found that my biggest accountability are people in my life, people in my circle that question me, what am I doing that's helping me towards a goal, or what am I doing that might be preventing me from reaching that goal? And a lot of times those accountability people don't even realize that I've identified them as my accountability, because I've got so many goals that are all going on all the time. But just them being there for me and me communicating what's going on, how am I feeling about things, it's my opportunity to check in with people in my life that are there for me.
That's a really good point. I think I have something similar. I have a writing group that we do with my cohort every week. And at first we just started it because we didn't see each other, because we were all remote. But now it's something that motivates you to get into like a work headspace, which has been really useful. I think it's kind of similar to study hours in that way.
Well, and you said something that's important, that that group that's set aside, that group is not there to help you with 5 different goals across your entire whatever else you have going on in your life. That group is there for that one purpose. And I think that, partnered with, you need to set aside time. If this is a goal that's really important to me, Tara, then how am I setting aside time to work on this goal? Because if I'm not setting aside time, then it's not a priority. It could be a goal, but it's definitely not a priority. And I heard this a long time ago, and I shared it with somebody in the office, and it still resonates with me. And I struggle with it because it's so true. But all of us have the same amount of hours in the day. We all have the same. There's no, like, you have 24 hours and I have 24 hours. How you spend that 24 hours, though, is really what we're talking about. And instead of saying, oh, I don't have time to exercise, what we need to be saying is, exercising, I don't have time to exercise, it's not a priority. Because you can have time, you can make time to exercise if it's the biggest priority. But when you look at what is it that is taking up my time, for me to say I don't have time to work on this goal that I really want to work on and it's really important to me, then it's up to me to determine, where does that goal fit in terms of my priorities, and how am I being strategic in spending that time?
Yeah. I feel like that kind of, I don't know, I keep thinking when we're talking about not reaching goals, and I feel like it's kind of a hard lesson learned, but even if you don't reach a goal, there's something you can get out of that. Like, maybe it's actually not as big of a priority as you thought it was, or maybe it's not as realistic as it should be and you need to set smaller goals, right? I don't know.
Absolutely. Nope, that's absolutely right. And I know I've said this in a lot of the different classes. The best learning that someone can do is from getting it wrong. And I see this all the time with students. They come in and they expect, I came in to this program having a 4.0 and I got straight A's in high school and I never had to crack a book and I never had to study. It just came natural to me. Well, that's great, Johnny, but college is different. And so some of those expectations are going to shift and change. And it's really not until that student struggles academically that they stop and think, oh, the way I did things before wasn't an effective way for me to do things now. Now I have to figure out what I should be doing that's going to, and you piece together that, but that happens through that learning. So we those natural learning experiences.
Yeah. My parents always called it, you have to learn things the hard way. That's what they would say.
Well, I don't know if I'd say the word hard, but you have to learn things like by experiencing it. And that, like, I don't know. I just feel like until a student experiences that failure, that not reaching a goal, and then looking at why didn't I reach this goal, and that actually ties all the way back to what when we were first talking about those hurdles. Without that ownership, when you fail, it now becomes it's somebody else's fault, not me. And it's almost like this narcissistic approach, and it's never going to be your fault. It's always somebody else's, when in reality, you never own that goal. Wasn't something you owned up to and took responsibility for. So if whether or not you failed it doesn't matter, because you're not fully invested. And I think that's where that really, really dangerous and ineffective kind of mindset comes in, because if I'm not fully 100% invested into this goal, if I don't reach it, then it's not the worst thing that's ever happened, because it wasn't really my fault, or it wasn't something I really cared about. There's nothing really at stake. And that it can't work like that, because if you're going to really reach a goal or not reach a goal and learn in the process, you have to be fully invested. You have to be all in, and you have to take ownership and responsibility for that.
Yeah. It's like a disconnect between the two. Well, do you have any other advice or suggestions for our students?
Well, I think because I know that this is such a area of, just again going back to professional interest, but also personal interest. After 15 plus years of really exploring this goal setting and how do we reach goals and working on goals, 15 years later, I'm still learning. And I think that's the piece that that I need to be reminded of every once in a while. Like today, I was sharing with you about my schedule and how it was, I made a mistake and everything was kind of thrown off. Yes, I'm learning where I went wrong, but more importantly, 2 years ago, I was having this same problem every single day, versus now it's once, and it's been months since this happened before. So taking a minute to just recognize that just because you've been doing it for a long time and you think you're good at it doesn't mean there's not an opportunity to still learn.
That's a really good point. Well, thank you, Tara. This was very helpful.
Thank you so much for having me.